What's going on? Happy Hump Day. This is episode 4 of Over the Hump, where every Wednesday I'm going to be coming on to give you guys more information about a particular health or physical therapy related topic. This one is going to be on neck pain. And first off, I really appreciate all the positive feedback I've gotten so far on the Over the Hump videos. So I think it's going to be a thing. So it really is. If you guys want to have me cover a particular topic, just send it in and I'm going to keep doing these week after week. So until I decide not to. But this one is on neck pain. Neck pain is one of the most common things I see in the clinic. It's right up there with low back pain and shoulder pain. Those are, for me, probably the 3 most common things I see. But there are so many different issues that can go on in the neck that I've got to generalize this a little bit and talk about some of the most common symptom presentations. So when a person comes in to see me for neck pain or really any pain, my first mission in my mind is to figure out which tissue structure is actually generating the pain symptoms. And that could be anything from like a ligament, it could be a muscle, like a trigger point or a muscle strain. It could be a disc, so discogenic pain. It could be a facet joint. Every single vertebrae, as it connects to the vertebrae above and below it, connects with what we call facet joints. That allows the bones to move, so it could be a problem with that. There are little meniscus basically within the joint, so almost like the articular cartilage of the joint, and a lot of other structures that could be causing the symptoms. So we've got to first figure out what is causing the symptoms, and then you have to back up and say, well, why? So often in the body where we are experiencing pain is a site of dysfunction, but that dysfunction was caused by a problem somewhere else. In the neck, most commonly the top of the neck and or the bottom of the neck, which I'm going to show you here in a minute on a little bit different anatomy diagram, those areas aren't moving very well. Most of the motion out of our neck should really come from the top of our neck in terms of rotation. We should have roughly 85 to 90 degrees of rotation either way. Most of that movement should come from C1 to C2 vertebrae, which is called your AA, your axioatlantal joint. But if that joint is restricted, then the middle part of the neck has to do a lot of rotation that it's not really designed very well to do. And so that can create a lot of wear and tear or miles on the tires or wrinkles on the inside, however you want to put it. That just causes a lot of breakdown of those tissues because they are being overused. So within the neck, it's extremely important that we are able to go through and assess which areas are restricted and stiff and which areas are too loose or hypermobile, and then restore the normal motion curve that should be there in the neck. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit differently on a little anatomy tutorial here in just a second, so watch that now. All right, guys, the anatomy portion of this may not be super sexy, but let's face it, neither is neck pain, so stay with me. We've got 3 major parts of the neck that we're going to be talking about. The cervical spine is on top, the thoracic spine is in the middle, and the lumbar spine is at the bottom. Now, these 3 different parts of the spine function very differently as they contribute to our overall movement pattern. So the cervical spine, which is the top box, is the most mobile part of the spine. This allows us to quickly turn our vision without moving the whole body or to track a moving target with our gaze without moving the whole body. The thoracic spine is the most stable part of the spine because the ribs protect the organs and the ribs come into the thoracic spine, providing a lot of stability. And then we have the lumbar spine again at the bottom, which is pretty mobile and allows us to bend and twist at the waist and contributes a lot to our overall mobility. So there's 2 main areas of the neck that are going to start causing most people problems due to stiffness. And the first one is this upper cervical spine. Look at all of the different muscles, guys, that go in and attach to the upper neck or the skull. And due to poor posture and honestly just a lack of really taking our neck through full ranges of motion in a good neck position, over time, this top area of the neck gets really restricted. These muscles I'm highlighting now are a group of muscles called your suboccipitals. These guys just get very tight and often contribute to what we call tension headaches. At the bottom of the cervical spine, we get more what I would call joint or structural restrictions because of how close it is to the thoracic spine. Remember, the thoracic spine doesn't move very much because of the connections into the ribs, and the bottom of the cervical spine ends up functioning more like the thoracic spine than the rest of the cervical spine. So that leaves the middle part of the neck. When you take those 2 areas of stiffness, the upper cervical spine and lower cervical spine, into consideration, we we end up getting a lot more wear and tear on the middle part of the neck than we should have, because these are the vertebrae that end up having to make up for the loss of mobility in the other two areas. God, I hope that was helpful, because it sure took a long time to make. So when we break the neck down like that, again, this top area of the spine up here has what I would consider to be like joint and soft tissue restrictions. The bottom part of the neck, where your cervical and thoracic spine meet, has more what I would consider to be structural restrictions, which causes a hinge point in the middle of the neck. And pretty much everybody has one. You can usually identify this if you're standing behind someone. Wherever the little wrinkles are in the middle of their neck, that's their hinge point. Because when I bend backward, hopefully this actually plays out well on the camera, you should be able to see somewhere in here, like where my neck actually bends. From the side. All right. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Like, we're going to have some movement at the middle of the neck, and the neck joints are set up well for flexion and extension. The problem becomes when the stability muscles, so the multifidi and the deep neck flexors and some of the other stability systems of the neck, the muscles that I would consider the rotator cuff of the neck, are not functioning super well, and they're not able to adequately stabilize those middle sections of vertebrae. And again, when the other two areas, the top and bottom of the cervical spine, become more restricted, that's when we end up getting a lot of wear and tear or degeneration building up in the mid-neck. All right, so what can we actually start to do about this problem on a regular basis so that it doesn't get worse, or maybe it actually even starts to get better? First of all, we gotta play some defense. So that means you gotta stop sitting in such a shitty posture. So what that looks like, if we're working on a computer and our head is in a good upright stack position, that does not require a lot of muscle activity because my head is over the top of the rest of my body. So this is a good position. As my head starts to fall forward and my upper back rounds and my chin juts out, that is shortening all of the tissues at the top of the neck. It starts to restrict the joint capsule, it starts to shorten all the muscle tissues, and that is one of the ways that we create that upper neck restriction in those upper cervical vertebrae that should be able to provide us a lot of our rotation. The more time we spend in this closed position, the joints are getting harder and harder to fully open or fully move the way that we need them to. The other thing that's happening, as your head is always out in front of your body, all of those muscles on the back of your neck that you're always feeling like are so tight, they're so tight because you're making them work all day. If we're here, gravity just sort of keeps my head on top of my body. If I'm here, or even worse, if I'm here, then if these muscles were to turn off, like that's what happens to your head. Your head falls forward because the fulcrum has now moved out in front of your body. And so those posterior neck muscles, your upper traps and a bunch of those other cervical muscles that I showed you in that video, those guys have to stay on all day to prevent your head from falling forward if it's not stacked up over the body. So that becomes a really important concept when we're trying to work on muscle tension, or the things that cause like tension headaches, and open up mobility in that upper part of the neck, is really just maintaining a good daily posture. So you've got to work on your work setup, and you've got to limit the amount of time you're spending on your phone pointed down. So you need to be bringing your screen up towards head level so that you're able to stay in a good position, watch time spent on your phone, and watch the amount of time you're spent sitting in general, to where you're not falling into what I would call like a slackened sitting posture, where you're kind of just resting on your ligaments and you're making those back muscles work a lot harder than they should. And if you're finding yourself unable to get back into a really good position, sorry to say this is sort of job security, but you need to get into a good manual therapist to start opening up that range of motion. Because if you can't even get into a good position, it's going to be impossible to work the muscles back into that good position. Muscles can't fire in ranges of motion that your body is not really able to achieve. So even once we do open that range of motion up, we have to do some specific training in that new range of motion so that you own it. But if you can't even get back there in the first place, you really do just need to get in to see somebody and start working on mobility so that you can actually have a better outcome with these exercises. But the offense part is that we're going to start strengthening the group of neck muscles called your deep neck flexors. If you guys have ever been to physical therapy for neck pain, most likely they've had you do chin tucks, kind of like what I was doing there in sitting. If you're just doing chin tucks in an upright position, we're leaving a lot on the table for progress that we could be making, because that's not really working the muscles against gravity. So we need to actually start adding load to the tissues. And the best way to do that I have come up with is in your car seat. So we're going to take a look at that now and take a little bit of a field trip.
What's up? I'm not saying I made this up, but I've never seen anybody else do it. So hopefully other people are doing this. An easy way to progress chin tuck exercises against gravity is to do it in your car seat, because the car seat has a nice supportive headrest that goes all the way up to the top, and we can recline the seat to make it more difficult. So in a normal chin tuck position, and when I'm just retracting, I'm opening up that motion, I may be activating these muscles a little bit, but I'm not doing it against gravity. There's no resistance. And so if we do it into a car seat here, where I'm just retracting and holding and then gently lifting up off, at this very top position, it starts to get a little bit more difficult. What you want to do is slowly lean the seat back more and more over time. Now, as I go into a chin tuck and lift, I'm actually lifting my head up a little bit against gravity. And the more I recline the seat back, the more load I'm adding to these deep neck flexors. So typically I start people out with a 10 times 10-second hold if they're able to do that, which you should be, since we're being able to pick the position. If you can't do 10 repetitions of a 10-second hold, then you need to move the seat back up more vertically until that becomes relatively easy. You shouldn't be getting a lot of activation of your sternocleidomastoids or other big neck muscles. We're just wanting to work the deep neck flexors that live on either side of your throat. As you get stronger, I would encourage you to start leaning the seat back more and more. Once you get to about 60 degrees, I like to increase the hold time instead of leaning the seat back more and more. I like to move up to 15 to 20 seconds. And then once you're able to get 8 repetitions of 20 seconds, I lean the seat back even further till you get about 45 degrees. You can continue this exercise progression by either adding more recline to the position so that you're lifting against more load, or adding more time under tension being held by the muscles. Both are a great way to increase the strength and load capacity of your deep neck flexors. I would encourage you not to add resistance and duration at the same time. So don't lean the seat back more and hold it for longer at the same time, or you're going to start kicking those big neck muscles in that we're trying to avoid during this exercise.
All right, so hopefully that gave you guys a good image and a good idea for some exercises that you can be doing every day. Again, guys, if you actually want to change something, you have to be willing to change something. So while that may not look like the most fun thing to do every day, most of us get in and out of our car multiple times a day. Make it a rule. Every time you get in and out of your car, you're going to lean your seat back a little bit and do 5 to 10 chin tucks. That would make a huge difference if you're actually experiencing neck pain, and you wouldn't even have to pay me to do it. So the other thing that I want you guys to think about when you're doing these deep neck flexor exercises and any type of stability exercise in the body, I'm big on these concepts that we can carry over to any other part of the body. And this is the big one that I'm going to talk about this video. So hopefully you guys made it this far. If we are trying to fire deep muscles in our body, you need to fire very slowly. If you're trying to fire big muscles in the body, you can fire quickly. So think about firing slow if you are trying to fire deep, and firing quickly if you're trying to fire big muscles. We are trying to fire some of the smallest, deepest muscles in our body. That requires us to be moving very slowly. If we do these exercises like super quick, and we're like lifting and tucking, you are not going to be working the right muscle groups at all. You're going to be working all of the muscles that your body is already using to compensate for the underactive muscles that we're trying to train. So you're literally just going to be reinforcing and strengthening bad firing patterns. Don't do that. Take the time. I would rather you do 1 or 2 reps correctly than 30 reps fast. That's just not going to help. It's not. So remember, fire slow to fire deep or small, and fire quick to fire big or superficial muscle groups. You can think about like your glutes would be an example of a type 2 muscle fiber that's a big explosive muscle that typically is trained well with explosive type activities. That's the opposite of the deepest layers of the hip or spine or almost anywhere else, or your rotator cuff, where you need to be using very slow speeds. Those are all type 1 fibers. They are postural type muscles, and they act more as a dimmer instead of a light switch. So think about a light switch where it's like on off. That's like your bicep, right? It can like on off, it can contract and relax just very quickly. If we're firing like a rotator cuff, it's meant to fire more as a dimmer, where it's slowly going to ramp up or down in function depending on the loads that are being placed on it, but it's not meant to like move the shoulder back here real quick. Those are other muscles that are working. Your rotator cuff's job is to stabilize the ball in the socket while it's doing that. I feel like this should be in the shoulder video. But anyway, we'll talk about it again. It's a very important concept and it applies to all areas of the body. All right, guys, so recap with me real quick. Most common problem of the neck is you have a restriction at the top or bottom of the neck that is requiring the middle of the neck to work too hard. The first step, honestly, is the best thing to do is get in to see a physical therapist and have them help you reduce the restriction in your neck so that your neck can more have an equal distribution of motion, kind of like a slinky. When you open it, each segment contributes to the overall motion of that curve. Your spine needs to be able to move the same way. If you have restrictions in the spine, then you have sections of the spine that aren't contributing to the motion curve. And then you have other areas of the spine that are having to do more work to make up for the segments that are not working. So you really need to get in, see a manual therapist, and have them loosen up those restrictions so that your spine is moving more equally. The second step is to work on strengthening the position of good posture and strengthening the stability muscular layer within the spine. That's what's going to actually give you longevity of your neck. Your muscles are your shock absorbers that take stress off of the joints and connective tissues. So if your muscular layer is insufficient, you're going to be inducing a lot more wear and tear into those joints and connective tissues because we don't have our shock absorbers. So those are the main things that I would want you guys to take out of this video. There's so much, guys. I mean, I could do like a 3-hour long course on neck stuff, but there's just not time in these types of videos. So please ask questions. If you watch this video and you're like, hey, I still have no idea what to do for my neck, I might be able to give you some specific answers to your specific questions, but this is one of the most common presentations I see, and I just wanted to bring some awareness to what's probably going on in your neck and a couple good things to try to start. So I hope this video was helpful. Thank you, as always, for watching. Please submit any inquiry requests for the next video, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you.